report number 776. Discussion. Representative Har.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Please note my serious reservations, and may I have brief comments, please?
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to thank the CPC Chair for making the effective date of 21/12. My concern really does arise from the testimony that was submitted by Jeffrey Ono, the Division of the Consumer Advocacy. Specifically, he notes that the Consumer Advocacy is concerned that this bill would repeal all of the legislation passed in 2012 that provided the regulatory framework by which an undersea electricity transmission cable would be developed. If a decision were to be made to move forward with the development of an undersea cable, under HRS 269-131 to 269-135, entitled the Inter-Island Transmission System, it provided a clear regulatory path by which the cable could be developed. These provisions set forth the request for proposal process, the certification process, and the cost recovery mechanism for a certified cable company. Each of these elements is intended to remove regulatory uncertainty from the process of developing, installing, and operating an undersea cable, but discussion on Act 165 Session Laws of Act 2012 made it clear that these provisions were only part of a larger, ongoing discussion on the benefits and costs of an undersea cable, not the end of it. And for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I'm with reservations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, members. Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In support.
In support, please proceed.
I'd ask to insert written comments as well.
So ordered.
Thank you. Just very briefly on this measure, really want to thank the CPC Chair for his work on this. Clearly, when the legislature passed the original law that established the regulatory framework for an inter-island cable some years ago, it had the intent of doing what is in the best interest of the public. There's a divide today, though, between what is in the best interest of the public and what is actually transpiring. As we look at the different utility changes that are taking place, both with distributed generation, with utility scale projects in the neighbor islands, with our very energy sector itself, we have to responsibly take a look at what our future is going to look like with our energy use here. Is it going to mean energy use here on individual islands or energy use collectively as a whole state? And that is a question that is yet to be answered, especially right now with the merger of potential HICO and NextEra on the table. There are proposals to do 200 megawatts plus of wind on Maui. There are proposals to connect and expand geothermal on the Big Island. There are proposals to do all sorts of things which could have potential benefits, but could also engender serious risks for those communities, for our grid, and for the cost to consumers. What this measure does is take a look at repealing a portion of what was put in place. And the only portion of that law it repeals reflects the ability for rate recovery from consumers to study and figure out this situation. What that means is we're repealing the ability of the state to add costs to consumers' electric bills to pay for the studies that these utilities are going to do. What we want to know is what those plans are in the first place before we allow the state to before we allow the utilities to charge consumers for these studies. That's what we want to know, because all of this is up in the air. There's billions of dollars in investment, both in the neighbor islands and here on the table, and the very future of our energy grid is at stake. We want to know what those plans are before we allow people to charge our constituents and our ratepayers for those studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Har, second time
Thank
still
you,
with
Mr. Speaker.
reservations.
Brief rebuttal, and I appreciate the passion of the EAP chair. But that said, again, if you look back at 2012, the law that we passed, also known as Act 165, all it was meant to do was to provide a degree of certainty to any cable developer in knowing how the selection process would occur and how the developer would be compensated. It was not a mandate to the PUC to move forward with the development of an undersea cable. It simply established the regulatory framework for an undersea cable if it was decided that a cable would be in the public interest, with the net benefits of the cable exceeding the costs. Therefore, since the framework in Act 165 would be called only upon when the state was ready to move forward with the installation of an undersea cable and not before the state is ready, it's not clear what the benefit is in repealing this legislation and how it best serves Hawaii in reaching its long-term clean energy goals. And again, for those reasons, I stand with reservations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Saiki.
Rise in support of this measure.
In support, please proceed.
I'd just like to note that in 2012, the Inter-Island Transmission Cable was a top priority of the former governor. And many in the public felt that that decision was being made without substantial public input. This legislation will permit the current administration to reassess that policy and to develop a framework in which to make a decision that will benefit the entire state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representative. Further discussion, members? If not, thank you very much. We're on Stand-Com Report number 777, discussion.